Sarah, there just isn't any room for you and the kids this year. The sentence fell with the same heaviness it always had, sharp, practiced, almost casual in the way her mother said it. Sarah Carter stood frozen in the middle of her small living room in Austin, Texas, her phone pressed loosely against her ear as the words echoed, growing louder in the silence around her. 8 years, 8 summers, 8 versions of the same rejection, and still, the sting never dulled. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting soft stripes across Sarah's drafting table where her laptop sat open, a half-finished design glowing on the screen. Only moments ago she'd been focused, immersed in color palettes, client notes, deadlines, but now, the brightness around her felt mocking. For a long breath, she simply stared ahead, trying to swallow the familiar ache rising in her chest. Her mother sighed dramatically on the line, as if she were the one burdened. You know how crowded it gets. Emily's kids take up so much space. I just don't want things to be uncomfortable. Uncomfortable for who? Sarah wondered, not for the first time, not for Emily, not for Emily's for loud, energetic children who were apparently deserving of every square foot of the beach house, but for Sarah, for her 2 kids, for the daughter who had never asked for anything other than to be treated as equally as her sister. No, their comfort had never been a priority. Sarah closed her eyes, steadying her breath. I understand, she whispered, even though every part of her wanted to scream that she didn't. But arguing had never changed anything, and she was too tired to beg when she hung up. Her hands trembled not with fear, but with a familiar cocktail of exhaustion and resignation. She set her phone down and sank into the small chair beside her work table, staring at nothing. Her apartment felt even smaller than it normally did, too quiet, too far from the warm, bustling beach trips that had once been the highlight of her childhood. Ethan and Lily were in their shared room down the hall, giggling over some cartoon, innocent, unaware, and suddenly, as if summoned by her thoughts, Lily padded out, still in her little dinosaur pajamas. Mummy, the 8-year-old asked, is Grandma gonna let us come this summer? Ethan and I made a list of things we want to do at the beach. Sarah's breath caught. That list. She'd seen them scribbling at the night before drawings of castles, notes about catching crabs, tiny hearts next to swimming with Mummy. Her heart twisted painfully. For a moment she couldn't speak, then she forced a small smile. Grandma said, it's not a good time this year, sweetheart. Lily's face fell, not dramatically, just a soft, quiet disappointment that cut deeper than anything else. Oh. She looked down at her socks. Maybe next year. Sarah nodded, swallowing the knot in her throat. Maybe next year. But they both knew she didn't believe it. When Lily disappeared back into the bedroom, Sarah wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her shirt. She wasn't someone who cried icily, but moments like these always cracked her open. The cruel irony was that her mother knew how much those beach trips meant to the children. Yet every year, Sarah was forced to break their hearts with the same excuse. Her sister Emily never missed a chance to rub salt in the wound. Emily, with her perfect suburban house, her perfect marriage, her for perfect kids who always took priority. Emily, who once sneered during a Thanksgiving dinner, if your little design hobby made real money, maybe you wouldn't need Mom's beach house so badly. As if Sarah weren't working herself to exhaustion, as if raising 2 children alone weren't enough proof of strength. But no matter what she did, she always felt like the outsider, the spare daughter standing on the wrong side of a closed door. By the 8th summer, the resentment had begun to coil deep inside her. Sarah wasn't proud of the feeling, but she couldn't deny it. The exclusion, the favoritism, the dismissive tone in her mother's voice. It was changing her. And everything came to a breaking point on her mother's birthday. The whole family gathered at Emily's house, big, spotless, decorated with expensive furniture Sarah couldn't dream of affording. Emily greeted her with a tight smile, looking her up and down as if evaluating her clothes. During dinner, Sarah tried to share a small victory, something she was truly proud of. I just signed a new contract, she said gently. It's a 6-figure deal with a major company. My biggest project yet. There was a brief pause, a chance, just a moment for her family to acknowledge her success. But Emily laughed. 6 figures? From sitting at a computer all day? Come on, Sarah, that's not a real job. Her mother didn't defend her. She didn't say a word. Sarah felt heat rush up her neck, humiliation bubbling just beneath her skin. She looked around the table at faces that didn't seem to carry something inside her cracked. Later that evening, after the cake was cut and the guests had left, her mother approached her with that same condescending tone Sarah had grown to recognize. By the way, she said lightly, as if discussing the weather, about the beach trip. There's no room again this year. Emily's family already called dibs on the bedrooms. You understand, right? Emily, standing behind her, added with a smirk, "Maybe if you were more settled, you wouldn't need to rely on Mum's place." Settled, rely. Words that twisted like knives. Sarah didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply stood there, frozen, letting their words wash over her. But something had changed. This time, the pain didn't make her small. This time it fueled something else, quiet, steady, and determined. When Sarah walked to her car that night, her kids holding her hands, she looked back at the warm, glowing windows of Emily's house and felt nothing. No longing, no hope that next year would be different, just a single, burning realization: if they don't have a place for us, then I will build a place where we belong. And that thought, sharp, fierce, and liberating, was the moment her story truly began. The drive home from Emily's house that night was quiet, too quiet. The children slept in the back seat, unaware of the storm inside their mother. Streetlights flashed across Sarah's windshield, each one illuminating the same realization settling heavily in her chest. The door to her family had closed a long time ago. She had just never admitted it to herself, but now she knew, and the next morning she acted on that knowledge. In the weeks after her mother's birthday, something in Sarah snapped into focus. She stopped waiting for people to see her worth. She stopped hoping for validation that would never come. Instead, she poured every ounce of energy into the one thing she could control: her future. She took on extra projects, sometimes working past midnight while the kids slept on the couch beside her desk. She raised her rates nervously at first, then with confidence when clients agreed without hesitation. As her workload grew, she hired 2 part-time designers to help her keep up. For the first time in years, her business felt less like a desperate survival plan and more like the beginning of something real. By early spring, she upgraded from working at her kitchen table to renting a small office downtown. It wasn't glamorous, just 2 rooms, a single window, and mismatched furniture, but it was hers. She decorated the wall with her children's drawings and a small framed print that read, "Build what you were told you couldn't." And she did. Quietly, relentlessly. She never mentioned any of it to her family. She didn't want to hear Emily dismiss her achievements again. Didn't want her mother nodding politely while her eyes drifted away. Keeping her success private felt like a form of protection, like reclaiming a part of herself they had never valued. One afternoon in early May, while scrolling through listings for a client project, something caught her eye. Small 12-room beachfront lodge for sale, needs major renovation, priced to sell. 12 rooms, beachfront, North Carolina coast. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She clicked the listing. The photos weren't pretty. Peeling paint, broken railings, outdated rooms, a pool half-drained and clouded with algae. The place looked forgotten, abandoned by the people who once owned it. But Sarah saw something different. She saw potential. She saw a chance to reclaim summers stolen from her. She saw a place where her children would never be told they didn't belong. She printed the listing, drove to the coast that weekend, and walked through the property herself. The salty wind whipped through broken windows. The wood creaked beneath her feet. But when she stepped onto the deck and looked at the wide stretch of ocean shimmering in the afternoon sun, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. She bought it, quietly, deliberately, without telling a single family member. The renovation was brutal but exhilarating. Contractors tore down old walls, installed new wiring, rebuilt balconies, expanded common areas, and transformed the murky pool into a sparkling infinity edge overlooking the water. Sarah invested everything she had, and everything she believed she could still earn into bringing the place back to life. By late summer, the once forgotten lodge had transformed into a stunning boutique resort she named Seaside Haven. It had 12 airy rooms, 2 luxury suites, a children's play area, a warm-lit restaurant, and a deck that glowed gold at sunset. When she opened for a soft launch, the first weekend sold out in hours. Guests posted glowing 5-star reviews about the ocean views, the service, and the peaceful atmosphere. Bookings poured in faster than she could refresh her inbox. Her children were the first people she took there. 2 whole weeks by the ocean. Their first real family vacation. Ethan ran across the sand until he collapsed laughing. Lily collected seashells and lined them up along the balcony railing. Every night, they snuggled against their mother as the waves crashed below. And Sarah realized she had built something far greater than a business. She had built a childhood her kids would never forget. Meanwhile, back at her mother's beach house, Emily posted pictures of her own summer, the same predictable pose on the wooden deck, the same captions about family time, the same sense of superiority that had made Sarah feel small for years. But this time, Sarah didn't feel small at all. She felt powerful, purposeful, free. As the season came to an end, Sarah made a decision that felt almost ceremonial. She sat at her office desk one evening, the sun setting outside her window, and picked up the phone. She called every relative who had ever treated her with kindness, every aunt, uncle, cousin, and family friend who had included her when others didn't. She invited all 22 of them to Seaside Haven for a fully covered Labor Day weekend. Just bring yourself, she told each one. Everything else is on me. Rooms, meals, activities, the works. A celebration of gratitude, a celebration of survival, a celebration of finally, unapologetically, choosing herself. And she invited everyone except 2 people, her mother and Emily. Labor Day weekend arrived, and the resort glowed with laughter and music. Guests wandered around, marveling at the renovated property. "Sarah, this place is unbelievable," an aunt told her, shaking her head in awe. "You built all this on your own?" Sarah smiled gently. "Every piece of it." But inevitably, the questions came. "Why aren't your mother and Emily here? We assumed they'd be first on the guest list. Is everything okay between you all?" Sarah inhaled slowly, choosing her words with care. "There wasn't enough room," she said quietly. "Not for everyone." The irony wasn't lost on her, and everyone seemed to understand more than she had expected. Within hours, word traveled back to her mother and Emily that night. After all her guests had gone to sleep, Sarah's phone buzzed. Her mother's name lit up the screen. She hesitated, then answered. Her mother's voice was tight, fractured. "Sarah, is it true? That resort Seaside Haven, is it really yours?" Sarah looked out over the moonlit pool, the ocean shimmering beyond it. She felt calm, steady, whole. "Yes," she replied gently, "it is mine." A long silence followed, and then Sarah added, her voice soft but unwavering, "Just like your house, this place doesn't have room for everyone." The weekend after Labor Day felt strangely calm. The resort was quiet again, the laughter of cousins and relatives fading into memory. But for Sarah, the silence that followed was not emptiness, it was clarity. She had made her decision, she had drawn a boundary, and for the first time in 8 years, she wasn't drowning in guilt for it. What she didn't expect was how quickly everything would ripple outward by the end of the week. The family had split cleanly in 2. The 22 relatives who had stayed at Seaside Haven returned home with stories not of luxury, though they admired the resort, but of Sarah herself, her kindness, her effort, her quiet strength. They spoke openly about how she had treated everyone like honored guests, how she had created a place of warmth despite the years of exclusion she'd endured, and while they praised her, they also questioned her mother. Why had Sarah been left out for so long? Why had only Emily's children been given space in the beach house? Why had Sarah been made to feel like an outsider in her own family? The questions sank deep, and her mother had no answers. Sarah didn't know any of this until the call started. The first came on a Tuesday night. Her mother's voice trembled before Sarah even said hello. "Sarah, what you did, inviting everyone but us, it felt cruel. You made a fool out of me. You're punishing me, aren't you?" Sarah held the phone to her ear, looking out the window of her small office. The ocean was dark and soft under the moonlight. For a moment, she let the ache wash through her, not anger, not resentment, just exhaustion. "I'm not punishing you," she said quietly. "I'm choosing who makes my children feel safe, and who makes me feel small." Her mother didn't reply. She only cried softly, accusingly, as though Sarah were the one who had locked the doors all those years. Sarah didn't match her emotion or defend herself. She simply listened, then ended the call when the silence between them grew to heavy. After that, her mother called almost every day. Some messages were weepy, others were sharp. All carried the same refrain: "You're hurting me. You're tearing the family apart. You didn't have to go this far." But Sarah stayed still, still like stone, still like someone who had finally learned the power of not explaining herself. Then came November. A week before Thanksgiving. Her mother called again, this time with a tone meant to sound conciliatory. "We're having a small family dinner," she said. "A chance to reconnect, to put all this behind us. Why don't you come home for the holiday?" Sarah paused before answering. "Mum," she said calmly, "your dining table only seats 8. Her mother hesitated. "Well, we always make it work when Emily's family comes." "Emily has 6 people," Sarah said softly. "You and Dad make 8. So tell me, where exactly would you like me and the kids to sit?" The silence on the other end stretched long and brittle. Sarah waited. Her mother didn't respond. "I see," Sarah whispered. "Then we won't be joining." And she hung up gently, without bitterness. That Thanksgiving, Sarah hosted her own dinner at Seaside Haven. She invited the relatives who had stood beside her, the ones who had embraced her with kindness when others wouldn't. They filled the long tables on the deck overlooking the ocean, sharing laughter and stories under the warm glow of string lights. For the first time in years, Sarah felt the fullness of belonging. Far away, in the beach house in North Carolina, her mother sat at her 8-seat table, the realization slowly settling upon her. This was what it felt like to have no room. Then December arrived. 2 weeks before Christmas, her mother called again, this time with a different request. "We'd like to celebrate Christmas at your resort," she said. "All of us, together." Sarah almost laughed at the irony, but she kept her voice level. "I can't host you," she replied. "We're fully booked for the holidays." It wasn't a lie, but it was also a boundary, a mirror, a lesson 8 years in the making. Her mother tried again. "Please, Sarah, we just want the family together." "You had 8 years to want that," Sarah said softly. "And my kids had 8 years of hearing they weren't welcome." She ended the call before her mother could respond. But Emily was not so quiet. Throughout December, Emily carried the story to every relative who would listen. She claimed Sarah had changed, that she had become vengeful, heartless, self-centered. "Ever since she made money, she thinks she's better than us," Emily whispered to cousins and aunts. "She hates us. She wants to tear this family apart." But those she spoke to had already seen the truth. They'd seen Sarah's generosity, her humility, her care. So Emily's words fell flat. All of it, every accusation, every twist of the truth came crashing into the open at the wedding of their cousin, Melissa. The venue buzzed with music and excitement, but the moment Sarah walked in, the air shifted, heads turned, people whispered. Emily froze near the bar. Their mother stiffened beside the gift table. It was the first time any of them had stood in the same room in months. Sarah kept her posture calm, her expression neutral, but she felt the tension crawling beneath her skin, heavy and electric. Emily had been drinking. It showed in her glassy eyes and the sway of her stance as she approached Sarah. "Why?" Emily said, voice low but trembling. "Why did you do it? Why did you exclude us? You blew up the family. You broke everything." Sarah looked at her sister, the same sister who had laughed at her 6-figure contract, who had called her work a hobby, who had let her children take over the beach house while hers stayed home summer after summer. "You shut us out for 8 years, Sarah answered. "For 8 years, my kids were told there was no space for them. You and Mum made sure of it. I only did what you taught me." Emily recoiled, anger flaring. "You're twisting it. You're making me the villain." Her voice rose, sharp and shrill, drawing eyes toward them. Before it could escalate, 2 security guards hired by Melissa for crowd control stepped in. One placed a gentle hand near Emily's elbow. "Ma'am, let's take a step back." The entire family watched, and in that moment, it became painfully obvious who was causing the scene, who was hurting whom, who had been causing the pain all along. Emily's anger melted into tears. She turned away, shoulders shaking, the weight of the truth finally crashing down. Their mother looked on helplessly, her facade cracking, as if realizing for the first time that her youngest daughter no longer lived in the shadow of her approval. And as Sarah stood there steady, silent, unshaken, her mother saw it too, for the first time in her life. Sarah didn't need her. She didn't fear her. She didn't wait for her acceptance. She had already built a world where she belonged, and neither her mother nor Emily had the power to take it away. In the weeks after the wedding, Sarah felt a strange lightness settle over her life. Something had shifted permanently, not just in her family, but inside herself. The confrontation, the tears, the stunned silence from her mother. It didn't crush her the way she once feared it would. Instead, it showed her just how far she had come. The year that followed only proved it by the next summer. Seaside Haven was no longer the little hidden gem it had been at its soft launch. It had grown, thrived beyond anything Sarah once dared to imagine, and with that success came the opportunity for something even bigger. So she built it. A second property, a mountain lodge nestled along the Blue Ridge Parkway, opened in late spring. It was breathtaking. Large timber beams, glass windows capturing every sunrise, cozy fireplaces, hiking trails winding through the pines, and a view that felt almost unreal. She named it Mountain View Lodge, a place where families could experience the quiet magic of the mountains. Just as her children had learned the magic of the sea, her graphic design business grew to what once was a one-woman hustle at a kitchen table had become a full agency with 8 employees, steady clients, and a waiting list for new ones. She took fewer projects herself, choosing instead to guide her team and spend time with Ethan and Lily. Time she used to sacrifice to exhaustion and deadlines. Her children flourished. They stood taller, spoke louder, and laughed more freely. They walked into Seaside Haven like it belonged to them because it did. Their confidence was no longer borrowed. It was built, rooted in the knowledge that their mother had carved out a world where they would never be turned away again. And the people who had stood by Sarah, those who came to the Labor Day trip, who asked nothing from her except presence and kindness, became her chosen family. They visited during long weekends, sent postcards from their travels, and checked in regularly. Their loyalty felt deeper than blood. Life wasn't perfect, but it was full, and that fullness made the past feel more distant than ever. Then one afternoon, almost exactly a year after the Labor Day gathering, Sarah's phone buzzed with an unexpected name. Emily. Sarah stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. She didn't feel fear. She didn't feel anger, just curiosity and a small thread of caution when she answered. Emily's voice was soft, not defensive, not sharp, but uncertain, almost fragile. Sarah, do you have a minute? Sarah leaned against the balcony railing of her office at Seaside Haven. I do. There was a pause long enough for Sarah to hear Emily inhale shakily. I owe you an apology, Emily said finally. A real one, not the kind that blames you or asks something from you. Sarah's fingers tightened gently around the railing. She stayed silent, giving her sister space. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what happened, Emily continued. About what you said at the wedding. About how we treated you all those years. And I can't defend it. I was jealous of you, Sarah, not because you had more, but because you were free, creative, brave, in ways I never was. You built a life without depending on anyone. I always pretended that made you irresponsible, but the truth is, it scared me. The confession left her voice thin and trembling. And Mum, she did favor me. I won't pretend she didn't. I let her. And I let that make you feel like you didn't belong. I shouldn't have. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. Her chest tightened not with pain, but with the weight of something she hadn't expected to hear. Emily drew a shaky breath. If it's not asking too much, I'd like to bring my kids to Seaside Haven sometime. Not for free, not as special guests, but as customers. They've been asking about the ocean, and I'd rather they see it from your world, not from Mum's. Sarah smiled faintly, a small warmth pressing against her ribs. You can bring them, she said gently. Just remember, our relationship needs space, slow steps, healthy boundaries. I know, Emily whispered. I don't want us to hurt each other again. And for the first time in their adult lives, Sarah believed her. As the months passed, Emily kept her word. She didn't push, she didn't overstep. She booked 2 rooms in the off-season, paid full price, and thanked Sarah sincerely. Their interactions were cautious but honest, something fragile, but real. Their mother's change came more slowly. One day in early autumn, she visited Seaside Haven for lunch, not unannounced, but invited by Sarah for the first time in years. She walked through the lobby quietly, her eyes taking in every detail, the photos on the walls, the soft music, the families laughing by the pool. You've built something beautiful, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah nodded. Thank you. A long pause stretched between them, filled with everything left unsaid. I was unfair to you, her mother confessed finally. I thought I was supporting Emily because she had the bigger family, the heavier load. I didn't realize I was putting all the weight on you instead. Sarah didn't correct her or comfort her. She simply listened. You deserved better, her mother continued. But I can't ask you to forget what happened. I just hope we can start again, slowly. Sarah studied her mother, the wrinkles deeper, the shoulders lower, the certainty gone. For years, she had wanted her mother to understand this one truth. Now that she said it, Sarah felt something inside her loosen. We can start fresh, Sarah said gently. But things won't go back to the way they were. I'm not the same person anymore. I know, her mother replied, and I think that's a good thing. In the months that followed, peace didn't come all at once. It came in small moments, short calls, simple questions, cautious invitations. Sarah didn't rush it. She didn't cling to it. She treated it the same way she had treated everything she built, with intention, with boundaries, and with a quiet, rooted strength. One evening, nearly a year after Mountain View Lodge opened, she stood on its balcony as the last light faded behind the ridges. Ethan and Lily played nearby, their laughter echoing against the hills. Sarah rested her hands on the railing, breathing in the cool mountain air. 8 years of being told there was no room for her. 8 years of being pushed aside. And now, she watched her children run beneath the stars, safe in a world she had created out of nothing but grit and hope. She whispered to herself, 8 years, they told me there was no place for us. So I built places where we would always belong. Below her, the lights of the lodge glowed warm and steady. 96 guests could stay between her 2 properties, people who felt welcome, cared for, and chosen. They had a house big enough for 8 people, Sarah murmured, And I built 2 resorts that hold 96. She smiled, not out of triumph, but peace. Sometimes, she said softly, when they tell you there's no room for you, that's when you build an entire world of your own.